her true story from Massachusetts. I was forced to marry my sister's killer. Do not be so picky. You are old now. Start being useful. My grandson shouted those words into my face with such casual cruelty, you would think he had been rehearsing them. The living room fell silent, except for the dull buzz of the ceiling fan and the crackle of the television playing some sitcom laugh track in the background. But no one was laughing, not at that. I stood there, hands still wet from doing the dishes, the hem of my shirt clinging damp to my stomach. I looked at him, a boy I used to rock to sleep, now towering over me, arms crossed, righteous fire in his eyes. My name is Evelyn. I am 55 years old. I had a husband, once. Cancer took him fast and merciless. I had a job, 32 years as a medical billing assistant, but they replaced me with a software subscription. No pension, just a pink slip and a warning not to fight it. With nowhere else to go, I moved back in with family. In Massachusetts, into the house of my late sister's oldest child and his wife. They told me I would have a room, not a burden, and I believed them. Or maybe I just wanted to. But over time, their smiles thinned. Groceries began to forget my preferences. They complained if I left the porch light on too long, or if I did not move fast enough to answer the door. My being there was tolerated, barely. Then one Sunday afternoon, they called a family meeting, which was code for cornering me in the living room like a stray dog they could not get rid of without a guilt trip. You have been with us 6 months now, my grandson's wife began, clutching her cup of tea like it was an award for patience. We just think it is time you stabilize. Stabilize? I asked, tilting my head. She smiled. Tight. Emotionally, financially, socially. I looked around the room. My niece sat on the arm of the couch, nodding solemnly like someone at a funeral. Her husband avoided my eyes, fiddling with his phone. Then he said it. Marry him. I blinked. Marry who? Uncle Warren? The room went dead quiet. Uncle Warren, my late sister's husband. The man everyone quietly blamed for her death, but no one ever talked about it out loud. A domestic accident, they said. She fell down the stairs. Except my sister had bruises up her arms, and she never was the clumsy type. I will not marry that man, I said calmly. My grandson scoffed. You do not have a lot of options, Grandma. And then, the insult that cracked me open. Do not be so picky. You are old now. Start being useful. Something inside me hardened. The kind of hardness that does not make a sound. The kind that sits deep in your bones and waits. I turned back toward the kitchen, said nothing, and dried my hands. That night, I heard them whispering in the hallway. They thought I had gone to sleep. They never expected me to stand just behind the door. She should feel lucky, one voice hissed. He is still strong, has his own house. If she marries him, we can consolidate the insurance. Less mouths to feed. She owes us, said another. We kept her off the street. That was when I knew. I was not family to them. I was an asset, a liability, a pawn. The next morning, I agreed to consider the marriage. I told them I wanted to think about it, that I needed time to adjust. They smiled, mistaking silence for submission. But I was not surrendering. I was remembering every cruel remark, every withheld plate of food. Every night they turned down the thermostat and told me to just wear another sweater. I remembered the bruises on my sister's neck and how Warren cried too hard at the funeral, but never visited her grave again. I remembered everything, and I began to write it all down. Every date, every conversation, every name. They wanted me to be useful? Fine. I would show them just how useful an old woman can be. Not with casseroles or childcare, but with truth, with memory, and with time. Warren Holtzman. Even his name tasted sour in my mouth. He was once my brother-in-law, married to my sister Janine for 14 years. From the outside, they looked like a stable couple. Holiday cards, church picnics, anniversary dinners. But I remember Janine calling me at midnight, more times than I could count, whispering from the laundry room while he snored upstairs. He pushed me again, she once said. I tripped over the coffee table. He drinks more now, she said another time. But only when things get stressful. Janine was the type who could cover a bruise with just the right shade of makeup and a practiced smile. I hated it. I told her to leave. She always said she would, after the kids are grown, or after this contract ends. But then one day she was just gone. Fell down the stairs, they said, slipped on her way to the basement. Warren called 911 himself, Cried during the whole call, cried at the funeral. Cried in every room except when no one was watching. Police investigated, briefly. Neighbors said they never heard yelling. There was no sign of forced entry. The coroner ruled it accidental trauma. Her neck was broken, and that was that. He collected the life insurance 2 months later. Janine had taken out a new policy the year before, just in case, and he was the sole beneficiary. I remember the way he wore that black suit to the insurance office, then drove off in a brand new truck the following week. And now, 10 years later, my family was asking me to marry him. They said he was reformed, that therapy and time had humbled him, that he had not raised his voice in years. He is a different man, they said. Really gentle now. I did not believe a word of it. I had not seen Warren since the funeral. He had not reached out, not even once. But after that family meeting, he started showing up again. First, it was a Sunday dinner. Then a walk around the block, always smiling, always offering help, lifting groceries, changing light bulbs, complimenting my scarf like we were in high school. It was all too polished, too rehearsed. I saw the way my niece beamed at him, the way she whispered to her husband when Warren handed me a plate, like it was all going according to plan, and it was, their plan. I started going through Janine's things the next day. Most of her files were boxed up in the attic of my niece's home. Old photo albums, recipe cards, tax forms. But tucked inside a folder marked medical was something that stopped me cold. A photocopy of a hospital intake form. It was dated 6 months before her death. Diagnosis: concussions, soft tissue damage. Location: upper arms, neck, and lower back. Cause: accidental fall, patient claimed. There was a second document clipped to it, a note from a nurse practitioner scribbled in the margin. Pattern suggests possible strangulation attempt. Patient denies. Referred to social services. It had never made it into any police report. Not a single one of those injuries had been discussed in court. The case had been closed before it ever truly opened. My hand trembled as I held the paper. My sister had tried to say something. In her own way, in a system that rarely listened, she had left a trace, a quiet breadcrumb. I held that file like it was her final breath, her final plea. My heart beat slow and hard in my chest. This was not grief anymore. This was war, and I was not going to be the next casualty. I put the file back in the folder, tucked it under my coat, and walked out of that attic as quietly as I could. No one asked me what I had been doing. No one cared. They just kept planning the next dinner, the next date, the next step in their little inheritance fairy tale. But I had seen the bruise pattern. I had read the note. I had felt Janine's ghost standing behind me, whispering through the dust, "Do not let them do this to you too." And I would not. It started with a dull ache in my stomach, a persistent discomfort that settled in after dinner. At first, I dismissed it as indigestion, perhaps a reaction to the rich foods Warren had been preparing. He had taken over the kitchen duties with surprising enthusiasm, insisting on cooking meals for the entire household. The family praised his efforts, commenting on how thoughtful and caring he had become. But as the days passed, the pain intensified. I began experiencing bouts of dizziness, moments where the room would spin, and I had to steady myself against the nearest surface. Nausea followed, a queasy feeling that lingered throughout the day, making it difficult to eat or even drink water. I mentioned these symptoms to my family, seeking some reassurance or advice. "You're just getting older," my niece said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "These things happen. It's probably just menopause or something," Warren chimed in, his voice dripping with feigned concern. "Maybe you're not used to my cooking yet. Give it some time, your body will adjust." Their words offered little comfort. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. The symptoms felt eerily familiar, reminiscent of the stories Janine had shared before her untimely death. She had complained of similar issues, stomach pains, dizziness, and nausea, before she fell down the stairs. Determined to find answers, I scheduled an appointment with my doctor. I underwent a series of tests, including blood work, to identify the cause of my symptoms. A few days later, the results came back. The doctor informed me that my blood showed signs of mild poisoning, likely from ingesting small amounts of a toxic substance over time. I was stunned. The revelation confirmed my worst fears. Someone was poisoning me, just as they had done to Janine. I knew I had to act quickly, but carefully. Confronting Warren or the rest of the family without concrete evidence would be futile and potentially dangerous. I decided to keep the test results to myself, pretending that everything was fine. I continued to eat the meals Warren prepared, feigning enjoyment and gratitude. All the while, I observed his behavior, looking for any signs of deceit or malice. One evening, while Warren was in the shower, I seized the opportunity to search his belongings. I entered his room and rummaged through his drawers and personal items. In his wallet, I found something that made my blood run cold. A life insurance policy in my name, with Warren listed as the sole beneficiary. The policy had been signed and submitted without my knowledge or consent. I felt a surge of anger and fear. This was the proof I needed. Warren was planning to kill me, just as he had done to Janine, to collect the insurance money. I took photos of the policy and returned everything to its original place, ensuring that Warren would not suspect a thing. With this evidence in hand, I contacted a lawyer and began building a case against Warren. I also reached out to the insurance company to report the fraudulent policy. They confirmed that the policy had been submitted with forged signatures and assured me that they would launch an investigation. I knew I had to be cautious. Warren was dangerous, and any misstep could put my life in jeopardy. I continued to play the role of the unsuspecting, grateful woman, all the while gathering more evidence and preparing to expose him for the monster he truly was. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and determination. I kept a journal of Warren's actions, noting any suspicious behavior or comments. I also began recording our conversations, hoping to capture any incriminating statements. Finally, I felt ready to confront him. I arranged a family dinner and invited everyone to attend. As we sat around the table, I stood up and addressed the group. "I have something important to share," I began, my voice steady. "I've been experiencing some health issues lately, and I recently discovered that I've been poisoned." Gasps filled the room, and all eyes turned to Warren. "I also found a life insurance policy in my name, with Warren listed as the beneficiary," I continued. "This policy was submitted without my knowledge or consent." Warren's face turned pale, and he stammered, "That's ridiculous. I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out the photos of the policy and the recordings of our conversations, presenting them as evidence. "I've already contacted the authorities and the insurance company," I said. "They are investigating this matter, and I have no doubt that justice will be served." The room fell silent, the weight of my words sinking in. I felt a sense of relief and empowerment, knowing that I had taken control of the situation and exposed the truth. In the days that followed, Warren was arrested and charged with attempted murder and insurance fraud. The rest of the family expressed their shock and disbelief, but I knew that some of them had been complicit in his scheme. I decided to move out and start a new life, free from the shadows of my past. I found a small apartment and began rebuilding my life, one step at a time. I took up gardening, a hobby that brought me peace and joy. I also started volunteering at a local shelter, helping others who had experienced abuse and betrayal. Through it all, I remained strong and resilient, determined to live my life on my own terms. I had faced darkness and emerged victorious, a testament to the power of courage and perseverance. And as I tended to my garden, watching the flowers bloom and grow, I knew that I, too, was blossoming into a new chapter of my life, one filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a brighter future. I was not done digging. After discovering the forged life insurance policy, I knew Warren was not acting alone. There was something too coordinated, too rehearsed, too convenient about the whole arrangement. The dinners, the concern, the pressure to marry. It was a performance, and someone else was writing the script. I thought back to the family meeting. How confident my grandson had sounded. How he had mocked me in front of everyone like he already owned the ending. So I called in a favor. Helen and I had worked together back in the day. She had started as a teller, worked her way up to regional compliance at a local credit union. She owed me one. I had covered for her when she was going through her divorce and missing shifts. "Just check for anything weird," I said. "Loans, joint accounts, co-signed papers with my name on it. I'll owe you peach cobbler for life." She agreed. 2 days later, she called me back, voice low and careful. "You're not going to like this," she said. I braced myself. "There's a personal loan on file, $75,000. 0 cents. Opened 6 months ago. Co-signaled by you and your grandson. Dispersed into a joint account. Investment purpose marked as real estate development. Monthly payments being drawn from a family trust account. also under your name. I sat down slowly. I didn't sign for any of that, I said. Well, someone did. The signature matches your old records, almost perfectly. It's clean. Professionally forged, if I had to guess. I felt the cold creep up my spine. Can you send me a copy of the paperwork? I asked. Already did, she said. But Evelyn, this isn't sloppy. This was planned. I stared at the scanned files when they came through. The signature looked almost identical to mine. The handwriting, the loops, the slant. They had done their homework. It was fraught, and it was deliberate. That night, I asked my grandson to talk. Just the two of us. He sat across from me in the kitchen, chewing a toothpick, phone in hand, barely pretending to listen. I found the loan, I said. He shrugged. Took you long enough. My stomach turned. You forged my signature. You stole my identity. You drained a trust that was supposed to support my retirement. He didn't even flinch. 75 grand is not even a lot, he said. Besides, you weren't using it. You're just sitting around all day, acting like a ghost. I clenched my jaw. You committed fraud. You could go to prison. He laughed. Ain't nobody going to jail over this. You think a judge is going to believe a bitter old woman over a clean-cut family man with a business plan? Then he leaned in, voice quiet and cruel. Who's going to fight for you? You don't even have anyone left. I looked at him. Really looked. And I saw it. Not the boy I had once tickled and fed and tucked into bed, but the man he had chosen to become. He stood and left the room like it was nothing, but it was everything. And so I called someone else. His name was Michael Mendez. He was a lawyer now, but 20 years ago he had tried to help my sister. Janine had filed a restraining order against Warren once, a document the police said didn't go anywhere, but Michael had believed her. He had filed motions, collected statements, pushed for a deeper investigation, and just when the case was gaining traction, he was removed. The family claimed bias, said he was too involved. Rumors spread, funding pulled, and like that, the momentum died. I tracked him down through an alumni directory, sent an email, brief and careful. They're doing it again, but this time I'm ready. He responded within the hour. 2 days later, we met at a diner, halfway between his office and my nightmare. I brought the insurance policy, the blood work, the forgery documents, and every photo, note, and journal entry I had collected. He read through them silently, eyes narrowing with each page. When he finished, he looked up. This is airtight, he said, and they're not going to see it coming. I nodded. I'm not here for sympathy, I said. I'm here for justice, for Janine, and for me. He smiled, small and grim. Then let's give them both. I said yes, not because I wanted to, but because it was the only way to get close enough to burn the whole thing down. The morning after I met with Michael, I told the family I had decided to accept Warren's proposal. There were cheers. My niece clapped like she had just won a prize. My grandson hugged me too long, like he was afraid I would change my mind. Warren just smiled. That snake's smile. Not too wide, not too forced. A practiced blend of warmth and calculation. I smiled back, just as rehearsed. Let's keep it small, I told them. Just family, at the house, nothing fancy. They agreed too quickly. The next few weeks were a blur of false planning. Cake samples I pretended to care about. Dress fittings I pretended to enjoy. Warren would hold my hand at dinner and talk about second chances and growing old together. I nodded and laughed when expected, but inside I was counting minutes, not moments. Then came the real reason they were excited. People started coming to the house. Not friends or guests. Real estate agents. I walked in on one of them taking photos of the dining room. "Oh," she said, startled. "Just capturing light angles." "For the listing." "What listing?" I asked, tilting my head. My niece stepped in too quickly. "Oh, just future planning, you know, exploring options." I said nothing, but that night, I checked the shared desktop computer in the study. They had left their tabs open. Full draft of the real estate listing. Charming multi-family home. Ideal for investors or new couples. Motivated seller, move-in ready. It wasn't even out of the house yet, and they were already selling it out from under me. The next morning, I set up a voice recorder app on my phone and began slipping it into different rooms. The living room, the kitchen, Warren's den. I downloaded a voice-activated mic from Michael's contact and tucked it into the potted plant next to the staircase. I collected everything, emails left open on shared devices, screenshots of group texts they forgot I could see, contracts printed and left carelessly in drawers. They talked openly around me, assuming I was too distracted by wedding details to notice the numbers behind their smiles. Then it happened. One evening, I left the recorder in the laundry room. Warren and my grandson used it to talk when they thought the house was quiet. The recording was just under 6 minutes. The first 3 were about splitting responsibilities, which accounts would funnel where, how to keep the insurance money clean, and how they would avoid attention by keeping things just legal enough. Then came the line. "He's already sickly," Warren said, laughing. "One fall like her sister. It'll look natural," my grandson replied without hesitation. "Once the policy clears, we split it. I already have buyers lined up for the house. No need to drag this out." Warren again. "She won't see it coming." I listened to the recording twice, then 3 more times. I didn't cry. I just sat very still, because that was the moment I knew. They were not guessing, they were repeating. Janine's accident wasn't a moment of rage or loss of control. It had been a plan. Cold, thought out, executed, and now they were rehearsing it again, for me. I sent the file to Michael immediately, along with time-stamped screenshots and witness notes. He responded within minutes. "We have them. Prepare for your moment." And I did. The morning of the wedding, I dressed myself in silence. They had picked out a simple white dress for me, polyester lace and a neckline that hung a little too low for my taste. It was cheap and thin, like everything about this charade. I sat at the edge of my bed, listening to the house buzz with fake excitement. "Florist just arrived," my niece called from downstairs. Warren was pacing in the kitchen, practicing his vows. I sat in front of the mirror, staring at the woman they thought they could bury in plain sight. I smiled. Not the smile they expected. My own. At noon, the guests arrived. Not many. Just a few neighbors, some cousins who owed favors. The living room had been cleared to make space. Chairs lined up, white ribbons taped to the stair railing, a Bluetooth speaker playing instrumental love songs. I walked down the hallway alone, holding no bouquet, no father figure on my arm, just memory. They clapped as I entered the room, sat next to Warren under the makeshift arch made of plastic ivy. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. The officiant cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join these 2 souls." I tuned it out. I scanned the room, waiting for one face, one ally. Aaron, my sister Janine's son. The boy who never came to the early planning, who said he had work conflicts. The one I called late one night and told everything. The one I trusted with the truth. At 12:07, the front door creaked open. Aaron walked in, dressed in black, holding a slim laptop case under one arm and a hard copy file under the other. My grandson's face dropped. Warren stiffened beside me. Aaron said nothing. He simply took a seat near the front, crossed one leg over the other, and nodded at me once. I took a breath. The officiant smiled, looking from me to Warren. "Do you, Evelyn?" I stood up. The room fell quiet. "I'm sorry," I said, voice clear, "but this marriage is cancelled." Whispers began. I could feel Warren's hand twitch in confusion. I turned to the crowd. "This isn't a wedding. This is a setup for murder." My grandson barked out a nervous laugh. "She's confused. She's under a lot of stress." Aaron stood. He opened his laptop and connected it to the projector they had rented for the slideshow. Only this time, it was not baby pictures or vacation shots. It was proof. Slide 1. The forged insurance policy, with Warren listed as my beneficiary. Slide 2. The loan agreement. $75,000, 0 cents. Co-signed with a fake version of my name. Slide 3. The recording. Audio filled the room. "She's already sickly. One fall like her sister. It'll look natural." People gasped. A woman in the back covered her mouth. My niece paled. My grandson tried to stand up, but Aaron turned the volume louder. "Once the policy clears, we split it. I already have buyers lined up for the house." The officiant backed away, slowly. Warren looked around for a way out, but the front door was blocked by 2 uniformed officers stepping inside. "Mr. Holtzman," one of them said, "we need you to come with us." My grandson tried to run. Another officer stopped him cold. My niece sobbed, not for me, no, not for the woman in the white dress, but for the crumbling tower of greed around her. I walked down the aisle alone, past all of them, toward Aaron. He handed me the file, and for the first time in 20 years, I said my sister's name without tears. "For Janine," I said, "and for every woman they thought wouldn't fight back." Outside, the sky had turned cloudy. The first raindrops fell, soft and steady, but I had never felt cleaner in my life. No one spoke. The living room, once dressed like a wedding hall, had collapsed into silence. Not grief, not shame, just the stunned silence of people who never thought they would get caught. My grandson bolted. He knocked over a chair, slipped on the edge of a rug, and vanished out the back door like a boy running from consequences. But the officers followed, and they were faster than fear. Warren didn't run, he knew better. His hands went up, his eyes darting toward me, like I was the one who had betrayed him, like I had broken his trust. The cuffs snapped around his wrists with a clean finality. He didn't say a word. As they read him his rights, I stood taller than I had in years. My back was straight, my hands steady. I looked at my niece, the one who smiled so wide when the wedding was announced, who spoke of fresh starts and keeping the family together. Now she stood frozen, mouth parted, eyes wet but empty. She whispered something. Maybe, I didn't know, or maybe, please, but I walked right past her. I didn't need her story, I had mine. At the courthouse, I signed every document with full control. I removed my name from every trust, every joint account, every contract they had wormed me into. I filed formal charges with Michael's help: fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, identity theft, and I backed it up with every recording, every receipt, every email they were too arrogant to delete. News traveled fast. The local paper ran the headline the next morning: Elderly woman exposes wedding murder plot. Family under investigation. It spread from there. A local radio station picked it up, then a regional paper, then national headlines. My face didn't appear. I didn't want fame, but my words did. I was never too old to be dangerous. A week later, I received a letter from the district court. Orrin Holtzman was officially indicted on multiple charges, including attempted murder and insurance fraud. My grandson, along with 2 accomplices, faced federal charges of conspiracy and financial theft. They tried to reach out. Voicemails, letters. One even sent flowers. White lilies of all things. My niece left a note on my new porch. I didn't know what they were planning. Please forgive me. It didn't respond. Silence, for once, was enough. Months passed. The trial began. I testified in front of a full courtroom, every word clear and calm. I told them about Janine. I showed them the bruises on paper, the timeline, the recordings. The paper trail they thought I was too old to follow. The judge listened. The jury believed. And I won. The court ruled in my favor. I received full damages for the stolen money. A formal statement of innocence and a separate civil suit gave me full claim to the property they tried to sell out from under me. But more than that, the court granted what no one thought I could get: criminal sentencing. Warren was sentenced to 15 years without parole. My grandson got 5, with 2 more on probation. The others took plea deals, their names etched into the system forever. The courtroom emptied. I sat on the bench outside, watching the clouds pass over the roof. Michael sat beside me, folding up his notes. "You did it," he said. I nodded, not because I was proud, but because it was done. And for the first time in a long time, justice didn't feel like a fantasy whispered behind closed doors. It felt like daylight. After the trial ended, I didn't go back to the house. The family that once claimed me had been unmasked, exposed not as caregivers or support systems, but as architects of betrayal. I had nothing to return to there. No pictures on the wall worth dusting. No voices I needed to hear again. Instead, I went to the only place where my name hadn't been used like a bargaining chip: Erin's home, a modest red crook bungalow on the outskirts of Worcester. The paint on the shutters was peeling, the porch creaked under the weight of time, and the hydrangeas were wild and out of control. But it was the most beautiful place I'd seen in years, because it was honest. The morning I arrived, Erin had baked a pie, not because it was a holiday or because he wanted praise, just because he knew I liked blackberry. That was it. No performance, no manipulation, just a small kindness that filled the house with warmth. He carried my single suitcase up to the spare bedroom. "You'll be safe here," he said, and I believed him. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was beginning. Each morning, I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead, wrapped myself in Erin's oversized flannel robe, and stepped out to the porch with a book. Some days I read. Some days I just watched the squirrels, and on the best days, I wrote. I started keeping a new journal, one not hidden behind phone passwords or tucked between mattress seams. A real one, leather-bound, heavy, and unapologetic. Each page filled with reflections, memories, quiet victories. I wrote with ink that didn't smudge, because finally I had nothing left to hide. I planted herbs in the backyard, basil, thyme, rosemary, aromatics that filled my fingers with scent and reminded me I was alive. I cooked meals again, not because someone demanded it, but because I wanted to. Garlic roasted slowly, onions that made me cry, warm bread and soft butter that made Aaron go silent in mid-bite. "God," he said one night, "this tastes like my mom's cooking." I smiled. "Mine too." We didn't talk much about the trial after that, not because it didn't matter, but because justice, once served, doesn't need to be relived every day. It just needs to be remembered, quietly, clearly, like a stone on the windowsill. I wrote a letter to Janine. "Dear Sis." They tried to do it again. The same shadows, the same trap. But I didn't fall. Not this time. You left clues, whether you meant to or not. Medical notes, bruises hidden in sleeves, old receipts they forgot to throw away. I followed them. And I made them stop. You weren't weak, Janine. You were just surrounded. They thought I wouldn't notice. But I did. And I didn't just remember. I responded. You can rest now. I'm free. And you are too. I folded the letter, walked out to the yard, and placed it under the soil of the apple tree we planted together years ago. The one no one ever watered, but somehow kept living. Aaron saw me from the window, but didn't ask. He knew. There were still bad days. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. Grief doesn't follow schedules. Some mornings I'd remember how close I came to becoming a headline. Some nights I'd dream of the house I built, of the hands that stirred poison into my meals. But every time that darkness crept in, I reminded myself, they didn't win. They didn't get to write the final chapter. I did. I started volunteering at a local shelter. Nothing big, just showing up, making soup, folding laundry, listening. A lot of the women there reminded me of myself, or of Janine. Some were young, some were my age, some were older, but all of them were told in one way or another that they were too much, or too late, or too old to start over. I never gave them advice, stories. Theirs weren't mine to fix, but I could sit beside them and remind them, gently, that survival isn't about strength, it's about truth. And truth? It ages like wine. It deepens, strengthens, and one day, when no one expects it, it uncorks itself. I looked in the mirror last week and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because I looked younger, but because I looked real. Lines on my face, gray in my hair, a soft apron of skin where there used to be muscle, and eyes that no longer apologized for seeing too much. I was never too old to be choosy, I whispered to my reflection. I was just waiting for the right moment to choose myself. So if you're still here, if you stayed with me through all of it, the silence, the bruises, the betrayals, the quiet fight, then let me say this plainly, because maybe no one else has. You are not too old to start again. You are not too soft to stand your ground. You are not too late to choose something better. Because choosing yourself, that sacred, quiet, earth-shaking act, is not reserved for the young or the loud or the lucky. It is for the brave. And bravery wears many faces. Sometimes it wears laugh lines. Sometimes it wears grief like a coat. Sometimes it walks with a limp, but it walks forward. For every woman who's ever been told she was too much or too little, too loud, too passive, too slow, too smart, too forgettable, too difficult, too dependent, too expensive to love, I hope my story shows you this. You are not too anything. You are right on time. They called me senile. They said I should be grateful. They told me to keep quiet, to not make it harder than it has to be, to let the past stay buried. But here's the thing about women like us. We remember, not to seek pity, but to restore clarity. Not to punish, but to name what was done so it can't be done again. And not all stories need a shout. Some are whispered, some are carved into journals, some are finally spoken after 50 years of silence. But when we finally do speak, oh, how the earth shifts. So if this story moved you, if it cracked something open, or reminded you of your mother or your sister or the version of yourself you thought you lost? Don't let it end here. If you believe every woman deserves to choose her life, no matter her age, subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Because we don't share these memories for attention. We share them for accountability. We don't tell stories for drama. We tell stories because they happened. Because too many were told to stay quiet. Because too many were never believed. Because some truths are so heavy, they need to be carried together. And because the past doesn't die when we bury it. It dies when we name it. We tell what they tried to bury, not out of vengeance, but out of dignity, so that the next woman isn't asked to stay silent, so that the next Evelyn doesn't have to bleed in private, so that the next Janine makes it out. We tell these stories not because we couldn't move on, but because we finally did, and this is how. So, wherever you are, in your kitchen, on a quiet walk, in your car outside someone else's house, just trying to breathe, you're not alone, and you are not voiceless. Welcome to Grandma True Stories. You've been remembered.